On Wednesday's show, this edition, the bearded genius is with us.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, everybody? Matt Derry with you. It is a Wednesday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, on a Wednesday, April 2nd into Thursday, April 3rd. Thanks for making us your first listen. Thanks for checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, of course, to our everydayers that are out there that watch or listen to the podcast daily. We're brought to you today by our friends at the Gametime app. Download Gametime, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL, and you're going to get $20 off your first ticket purchase. All the beat writers, and hey, even Stoney apparently was down there in Florida for the owners meetings. They're back in town. One of those guys is Ben Raven, of course, from MLive.com, Dungeon of Doom podcast. And he joins us today on the program. Ben, great to see you, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks for that bearded genius. I like that. That's a new one for me.
That could be your new nickname. Who knows? You look good, my friend. What is it like? Because and we see each other on Instagram and everything too. But like, you're just a fun guy, and you got the beard, you got it all going on. You're down at the Breakers in West Palm Beach. Did you feel a little underdressed? What was that like?
I did feel a little underdressed. I felt a little out of place, too, because you see all 32 owners, you see Guy Fieri, you see Serena Williams, you see Caitlin Clark, and you're like, what am I doing here? I'm just a dude from Michigan with a giant beard and my flamingo polo on, just hanging out. But no, that was that is a different world down there, man. Like I just told you, that's a rich person convention, but it was blessed to be able to do that, man. That was an absolute great time. And yeah, the whole most of the beat was down there, plus Stoney, man. So nothing to go wrong with there. Good group.
So I'm scrolling through the Twitter machine yesterday, and I think it was Honolulu Blues or one of these other Lion sites, and they were playing a clip of Ben Johnson being asked about his sort of pointed comments at Jared Goff. And I'm like, wait a minute, is that Stoney asking a question to Ben Johnson? What the heck's what is Mike Stone doing down there? He's got a lot of time on his hands. We know that.
That's right. I think he was already down in Florida, so he was like, yeah, I'll shoot over there and hang out with Justin Rogers and do our podcast.
Oh my God. Just insane. All right, biggest takeaway from you. You were down there for 3 days. What stood out to you for the owners meetings?
You know, it was kind of like a confirmation of everything we heard at the Combine. I would firmly put edge defender at the top of the order of draft needs and team needs and stuff like that. That Hutch extension is coming sometime. I don't know if it's this offseason, next offseason, but like the way Rod Wood, Brad Holmes, and Dan Campbell talk about him is like, that's done. That's going to happen. You know, I mean, that's a Lion for life. And, yeah, that's like the main takeaway there. I mean, the main messaging that I think all three were trying to get across was like, for the fans upset they didn't go out and get a Crosby or a Garrett or another big name, that like, we like our guys. Like, we like the guys we drafted. We think that, I'm speaking for the Lions here, like they think like running it back and not having the crazy injury luck that they had last year is going to be good enough, because that was the thing. They're like, it's 17 guys on IR and won 15 games in the best division in football. Like, you get some of those guys back, this defense is going to be better. So there is a lot of internal belief that this defense is going to improve just by not losing 17 players.
Go back for me. You just said edge rusher is still, you think, on the top of their list. Yet Brad Holmes the other day said some of the effect of the D-line room he still thinks is pretty full. Dan Campbell says he likes what they have. Is there a chance that you could see an O-lineman at 28? Heck, I brought up yesterday with the way they were talking about wide receiver and having to add a young guy and how Jamo could be too expensive. Who knows if Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State's there at 28? You never know with Brad, right? And what he would end up doing.
I don't think it's going to be offensive line in the first round, but I did walk away from that thinking it's edge rusher or it's receiver, almost like in my mind. Like, and they're a best player available type of drafting team. And this year, at least in the first two rounds, there's going to be a really highly likely chance that the best player on the board is either a defensive lineman or an edge rusher. And the reason I say edge rusher is because they did say that, but like they started talking about Josh Paschal kicking inside much more than playing outside. Levi playing inside more. I mean, he was forced to that big defensive end spot last year. They want him inside. So I think there's room for 2 edge rusher picks. I really do. The takeaway, we had some talks last night playing some Uno about midnight after hitting the beach, was like, would you really be shocked if they took an edge rusher first and second round like they did with a cornerback last year? Absolutely not. I would not be surprised by that.
Hold on, playing some Uno after midnight? Who's involved in that?
It's Rich Silva, Colton Pouncey, myself, and Nolan Bianchi. We're 4 of the 5 or 6 Uno gang. No Justin.
Oh, wow.
He did join us for dinner, but he missed out on Uno.
Oh my goodness. Nolan's the man. Ben Raven, and we love Colton too on this show. Ben Raven with us, MLive.com, of course, covers the Detroit Lions, has been on the beat now, and is the main guy now that our friend Kyle Meinke. And boy, if you're following Kyle Meinke on Instagram, he's overseas loving life. Good for him.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Yeah. You don't see much from him. And I think that's a good thing for him. I think he needed that, man. I really do. I mean that. Like he's living life.
I still think the Lions are going to end up playing a game in Berlin or something. And Kyle has to come. He has got to be there.
I know. I told him, I was like, get a freelance gig. Come join us in 2026.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned edge rusher. What have you heard about Brad Holmes and the front office's take on this whole James Pierce thing? Because that's a guy that many people have mocked to the Lions, yet there's this talk of James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee is not a culture fit with the Lions, and there's some things off the field. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard anything specific, but that's also my take on the situation. Like, you go through mock situations in your head this time of year, just like, would you take this guy if he was there? Ultra talented, obviously would fill a need, but like, they're so about best player, but also best fit. And, just the stuff you hear, like, I'm not down in Tennessee, but like the stuff you hear, you read and see, it's like, I don't know if that guy's a Lion. You're like, he looks great player, but like, it is a fit that is like one of those fit of those guys that maybe could be there that I just don't see. And maybe you go down to the second other guy. You're like, yeah, I really don't see a James Pierce fit in Detroit as much as they could use a player like that. Just everything you read, you see, you hear, it's like, yeah, you try and read between the lines on stuff like that. And that's definitely one of those guys where you're like, I think I'm going to pass on that one.
What else about Brad Holmes on Monday? Let's start with him. Caught your eye, and what did you get a sense from what Brad had to say about how this offseason is going so far?
Yeah, he was, I loved my question about Levi Onwuzurike, and he's just like, if you would have told me we would have been able to keep Levi and get into the top of the level cornerback market, I would have been doing backflips. Like, no chance at that. Like, everyone, all of us in the beat room thought Levi would get a multi-year deal pushing towards 10 mil per. So like, the fact that he was just real, like, yeah, that is the definition of a team-friendly deal, because then we were able to go out and spend 16 mil per on DJ Reed, and like, they didn't expect to do that. I know a portion of the fan base has been like, they haven't done enough. Brad straight up said, we did more than we thought we were going to be able to do. Like, there's just so many extensions coming down the line and tough decisions. I mean, they can't just think about this year. They got to think about next year in 2027, because like, it's not just about winning now for them. They're good enough to win now. We know that, they know that, but they want to win in 2026, 2027, 2028. And they're just trying to protect that as much as possible, because Hutch, Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, see what happens with Jamo. That ain't going to be cheap.
I know you're asked about this a lot on social media too. The Zadarius Smith situation. If you had to put a percentage chance on him, maybe he doesn't get signed for a while. Yeah. Maybe the agent just says, all right, we'll take a 1-year deal and come back to Detroit because he liked it so much. I mean, heck, his girlfriend is Cash Doll, the famous rapper. Yeah. What percentage chance would you give that maybe Z Smith's back?
I was at like 10%, and then I saw the photo of Cash Doll, and I went back up to like 20%. I was like, all right, we got a chance here. He's connected to Detroit. But I with Zadarius, I mean, my thinking would be he's probably just going to wait until the draft to see what these depth charts are starting to be projected like, to see what teams are doing. And heck, if they only draft one edge defender, and he's cool with another 1-year deal, a little less than what he was getting without those void years at the end of it, I wouldn't rule it out because he really was a fit. He really did fit with that coaching staff, with that defensive line room. And he still, he still had some juice in the tank. He had 18 more pressures than anybody else on the team. Of course, that guy was Aiden Hutchinson through 5 games and a couple other guys. But I don't expect it to happen, but I'm not ruling it out. So I'd say I'm in that 15 to 20% range on Za'Darius. Cashdoll bumped it up for sure.
They're always at the Pistons game. So, hey, what can you say? Then the Pistons are playing great. All right, Ben Raven is with us. When we come back, I want to ask him about Jamison Williams. Brad Holmes' candid comments, certainly, about the Jamo situation. And we'll get into some things Dan Campbell had to say, talk some draft as well, and some rule change stuff with Ben coming up next. But first, Locked On Lions today, as we mentioned, brought to you by our friends at the Gametime app. Final Four is here. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. And yes, we got games coming up this weekend. If people thinking about traveling, going down to San Antonio to see these two great college basketball games on Saturday, of course, Pistons and Wings. Get your tickets on the Gametime app. That's where Gametime comes in, because making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices is what you want from your ticket app. Gametime Picks is the best. It's curation that makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sporting events, concerts, comedy, theater, and whatever you want. I bought my tickets for Pistons Cavs last Friday on Gametime, sat up in the mezzanine. It was great, and I enjoyed the experience at Gametime. Plus, that view from your seat is phenomenal. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Our friend Ben Raven is with us. Does a great job covering the Lions for MLive.com, back from West Palm Beach and the beautiful Breakers Hotel down there. You weren't by any other famous big buildings in Palm Beach, were you?
Yeah, I was. We were driving to lunch one day, and I was like, man, that's a lot of Secret Service posts right there. And I was like, oh boy, I know what that is.
Stop in and say hi to some of the all right, I'm gonna get myself in trouble. All right, let's talk Dan Campbell. First of all, last thing on Brad Holmes. The Jamison Williams comments were interesting. Certainly Brad wasn't sitting there going, oh my gosh, we're definitely picking up his option. He's so great. Yeah, it's expensive. We got to keep him. It was kind of like the option. Yeah, I think we'll pick it up, but wide receivers are kind of expensive. And then saying too that they want to draft a young receiver. I mean, are we looking at a situation here where Jamo's got 2 more years here and then he's gone?
I would say it's probably leaning that way right now. And just as a beat writer who loves writing great content and covering exciting players, that's disappointing. But that's the smart route with all the guys that they're going to have to extend and how expensive a wide receiver like that might or could be. It's going to be tough. So yeah, pick up that 5th-year option. See how this year goes. I mean, if he goes out there and even builds on last year, stays out of the headlines for the wrong reasons, plays 15 games, doesn't get suspended, then we'll see what happens. But I really do think the best course there is to, and unfortunately for Jamo, but the best course for the Lions and what they should and probably more than likely are going to do is kick that tire down the road as far and as long as possible. So extend that 5th-year option. Let him play that out. If he's here for 2 more years, or if you trade him after that 5th-year option year, figure it out. But I would say it's leaning that way right now. But hey, the ball is in Jamo's court. Seriously, it's in his court. If he goes out and builds on last year, it's tough to say goodbye to that because they love paying their own guys. They love taking care of their own guys. And if he can just continue to climb up that rope, as Dan Campbell said last year, and get with everybody else and stay there without sliding back down it, you can't rule it out. But right now, that does feel like the guy out of those 6 or 7 guys I named earlier, that's probably the most likely on the way out before we know it. Not happening overnight, not happening this year, but a year or 2 from now wouldn't be the most surprising thing.
The right guard situation and left guard, certainly, everybody's talking about. I know you wrote about it too. All right, just slide Glasgow back to right guard where he was good 2 years ago. not so great on the left side this year, and move Mahogany in. Not that easy though, Ben. There could be some things down the pike here, right?
Yeah, the comments on Glasgow were interesting. Like they basically said, yeah, he didn't finish that season great, but we love him as a backup center option. So I was like, oh, okay, all right, we'll see what happens there. I really do think that like that is a position where I could see maybe them signing a veteran between now and the draft or after the draft. I wouldn't be surprised if they took a third, fourth, or fifth round pick on a interior offensive lineman, but as good as Mahogany is, and I know people have supplanted him as the no doubt starter. I mean, that's a 6th round pick who started 2 games. Those 2 games were good. Those were impressive. He plays the way they want to play. And you just got to see how Glasgow is, because I know everybody's out on him too, but like he was banged up. He was really banged up at the end of last season. So like a healthy Graham Glasgow, I don't know. Maybe I've just been around him too long. I just can't like rule that guy out and write him off. But like, even with that said, if you get the best out of Mahogany, you get the best out of Glasgow, they're healthy, they're bought in, you still need a little more there. And nothing against Coyote Awashika. That's a great depth piece, but like, you just need a little more. You need a little more experience. And I know the popular name is Will Hernandez. I've loved him since he came out of the draft. If they could get him on a 1-year deal, get him in here, because he's a big, strong, nasty guy that I think would fit the operation. And I think that would give you the right amount of flexibility and options coming out of camp that they really do need. They're not going to let this offensive line slip. So if they think something's slipping, they're going to fill that gap. I fully believe that.
Hernandez coming off a torn ACL. So's Alim McNeill. Yeah. Were you surprised at what Dan Campbell said yesterday about the Alim timetable?
No, not at all. Honestly, not at all. And they're going to take it easy with him because they want him to be full Alim when he comes back. But yeah, that was, what was that, week 14 Buffalo game that went down? Yeah, I mean, best case scenario, that's going to be the first half of the season. I was a little surprised to hear early portion of the season. I expected it to be all of training camp, kind of like the DJ Reader situation last year, but we'll see on that one. But yeah, I would say, I mean, Wingo was on Thanksgiving too. So like, that's only 2 or 3 weeks behind that too. So that's why I kind of still have interior defensive line as loaded as that room they say it is. I still think they need more because Pascal's entering the final year of his rookie deal. Levi's on a 1-year deal. Levi's got 1 great year under him. I think he's a heck of a football player. And if he can build on last season, figure out a way to keep him. But like, it is make or break time for Josh Pascal, especially if he's going to get to focus on run defending, playing inside, playing to his strengths. Like, the time is now. But yeah, it's an interesting deal because it's like the way Dan sounded yesterday, it's like, man, they might be without McNeill for like the first month of the season is kind of what I walked away thinking. That would be a big blow to that defensive line. They need him. That's a stud right there. That's a cornerstone piece.
The time is now. You're doing some Jim Caldwell for us. I love it. Now we'll get it all out here, Ben. What about I was going to ask about, oh my gosh, I just completely lost my train of thought. Dan Campbell was talking about, Kyle Allen. Yeah. Kyle Allen versus Hendon Hooker. Ben Solak wrote about it at ESPN.com last week, and I said, Hendon Hooker's not losing his backup job to Kyle Allen. Kyle Allen wasn't even the backup in Pittsburgh last year, never played, and yet here we go. We got a backup QB competition. What does that say about how Hooker looked last year in practice?
I think it's more about the fact of putting some pressure on Hendon Hooker and saying this is not just going to be a walk in here, do what you did last year and take it. We need to see you continue to grow, continue to get better. They brought in Teddy last year. Obviously, you got benched for the playoff game. You bring in Kyle Allen, who's got 17, 18, 19 starts under his belt in the league. And like you said, not the most – I think people are blowing Kyle Allen up a little too much, but like the experience that he does bring, it's kind of like, hey man, if he beats you out, he beats you out. Sorry, there's no handouts here. So I do think it's kind of just what they're trying to do with those statements there is just to kind of put some what's the word I'm looking for here? Just some urgency to the situation, urgency to Hooker, get better, grow, buy in here. There's still a chance here. They're still excited about his ceiling, his optimism, and all that stuff. But like, I don't even disagree with it. I mean, shoot, if he comes in, he's the same guy he was last offseason. You want to have options, especially at quarterback. But yeah, I would say I would expect Hendon Hooker to win that job, but I think this is just kind of putting his feet to the fire a little bit with some public comments, with an external signing, and just saying, let's go. You got to go. We got to go. There's 2 years left on that rookie deal, and you're going to be 28.
Anything else that Dan Campbell said that stood out to you yesterday?
No, it was just a classic Dan situation. He walked in 10 minutes early and went longer than anybody else too. We looked down, we're like, we just got 40 minutes out of him. It's just, it was just a continued messaging of like, we're all about drafting, developing, and retaining the right type of guys. Like that is their true focus, and that is, as long as Brad continues to do what he does in the draft, I mean, that is the path towards sustained success here, no matter how big those contracts get.
Speaking of the draft, let's dive in a little bit on that with Ben Raven. We'll do that coming up next as he is back from Florida and the NFL owners meetings and some of the rule changes the Lions proposing not going through. We'll get to that next. Always love talking to MLive.com's Lions beat writer Ben Raven with us. Dungeon of Doom podcast with himself and Corey Woods. Check those guys out as well. Do a great job. As far as the rule change stuff that went through, anything that you like, I mean, kickoffs now, Rod Wood, I guess, said yesterday that they're fine with moving it up to the 35-yard line for touchbacks. Or I know the league is trying to get special teams more involved. Tush push stuff. Lions wanted all their things and didn't get any of them. What was your reaction to any of that yesterday?
I was a little disappointed that the proposal aimed at taking away the automatic first down for the defensive penalties. Not that it didn't pass, but that it had such little support. I think there were
2 votes.
Yeah, and it was, guess who it was?
Aaron Glenn and the Lions.
So that's pretty classic. Yeah, I'd like to see, maybe they can find out a variation for that next year. But yeah, the kickoff thing, I would just say this to fans. I mean, getting special teams more involved in the equation when you have Dave Phipp as your special teams coordinator and guys like Jack Fox and Jake Bates, and like the amount of special teams linebackers that they have, the Stewarts, the Pittmans, the Turners, that's a good thing, because what Rod said yesterday was like the best football thing he's ever said, was like, we're great in kickoff return coverage. We also have someone like Khalif Raymond returning kicks and a couple of kick returners we really believe in. And I'm like, yeah, that is. I mean, if you can get the Lions more return chances and you can get teams taking that ball out in the end zone more or taking it out and trying to return on them more, that's going to be a good thing for the Lions. Yeah, I personally hate the touchback moving to the 35-yard line just because it's already such a league and a rule book catered to the offensive side of the ball. And that's why I respected the proposal to get away with the automatic first downs for holding and illegal touching, just because it's like, let's empower the defense just a little more. I know the NFL wants yards. I know they want points. I know they want passing yards, explosive plays, and everything like that. But like, you got to empower the defense a little bit. So yeah, that one. And I'm with Dan on the tush push too. Figure out a way to stop it. Don't be scared to compete. I love Dan's take on that one. We play them next year. We got to figure out a way to stop it. So bring it on. That's quintessential Dan Campbell thinking right there.
I mean, Ben, I'm an old guy here, over 50, but I cannot believe. I mean, the touchbacks used to be the 20. Now we're 35. I mean, that is. One pass and a broken tackle, and you're at midfield.
I know.
That's pretty wild. As far as the draft, you mentioned before about edge rusher, maybe an O lineman. You mentioned receiver as well. Lions are sitting at 28. A lot of talk about maybe this is the year Brad Holmes moves back and accumulates more picks. What are you hearing about what they're thinking right now?
The way they're built with the 2 third-round comp picks that they have this year and next year from the AG hire, it could be another year where you see a Terrion Arnold situation where if a guy falls to 20 or something like that, go get him. Like if Shamar Stewart somehow falls a little bit, like that 15 to 20 range, go get him. But it's a little risky just with how good that D-line edge rusher class is. I think it's just going to matter who falls, who they're in love with. But if they could get a starting caliber edge defender that they love, people are going to not complain about what they did this offseason. And I just think there's a really big chance there, because if you can replace Za'Darius Smith's age and contract with a bona fide ready to roll first round pick at edge, that's good. That's really good. And I think that is the focus right now. But yeah, it's a good year to move down. I think it's a great year to move up, to be completely honest, for if you want to get into that top 3-4 edge rusher type of guy, which I think they personally should.
Is there a chance that if Kenneth Grant falls, and I know he's more of an interior D lineman, but like you said, the versatility, Levi can move inside, outside, Pascal inside, outside. I mean, Kaminsky was inside, outside. Now he's retired, but could you see a scenario where a Kenneth Grant is sitting at 22 and the Lions want to grab him before the Packers do?
There are two interior guys. Grant is one of them, and TJ Sanders from South Carolina is another one of them that is like a personal favorite fit for me that, like, man, I could sell that. Like, I could sell why they would do that just because, like, that would boost their versatility. Like, that would give them those options. That would give them not only someone to fill the gaps with McNeill and Wingo and next to Reader with 1-year deal left on his team control situation, but, like, that would just make that defensive line better. Like, as long as you can get pressure from anywhere, it's still pressure. And those are type of guys that can do that. They're all about run defense. Those are guys that can do it both. I'm with you, man. I think Grant would be a great fit here. Like I just said, TJ Sanders is someone where when I watch him, I'm like, he would look good on that defensive line right there. There's a couple guys right there. So, yeah, I pure defensive line first round is what I'm like. That's where my head's at right now. That's where it's going to stay. Like, I don't see myself budging off of that. But, yeah, I'd be down on that, and I would buy that mission statement right there.
Do you see a scenario where Jihad Campbell is in the mix? But the way they were talking about Derek Barnes this week, Barnes is going to be on the field somewhere. The question is, can he be an edge? Is he more of a Sam? What do you think?
I think Barnes is going to play the role that he was early last season. Like, when every single package, like, he's going to play some Sam. He's going to play some linebacker. He's going to play some slot corner. He's going to line up on the D line. Like, they really believe that he can do that, and they really believe that he can do more with that. There's a reason why he got paid. There's a reason why he got 3 years, because he fills a need. Yeah, he's not a pure edge rusher, but the guy's played a lot of defensive end in his life in the Big Ten, rushed a lot of passers here in the NFL now too, and looked pretty good doing it. Like, when he went down in that Arizona game, that was like, oh man, that's that versatility they just thrive on. And it's just, I hope he comes back and he's the player he was last year, because if he is, man, they've got a lot of pieces to roll around with. But Jihad Campbell, that's a Corey Woods favorite right there. And I would completely support it, because that is the most fun defensive player to watch in this year's draft class to me. I mean, he is an absolute freak. He has all the versatility, all the pass rushing chops, all the linebacker chops that you'd find a spot for him. You just would. So if there's some, by the grace of God, if he falls to 28, figure it out.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I don't think he's fallen past Tampa, but
no.
we'll see about that. Ben, great to see you, brother. Thanks for doing this today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Ben Raven with us from MLive.com on this, a Wednesday edition of Locked On Lions.